Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fitness Business Growth. I'm here with James Sackl. How are you, mate?
I'm pretty good, buddy. How about yourself?
Good, thanks, mate. So I met you maybe 12 months ago, and the first thing I said to you, I think, is probably the biggest compliment I can give someone. There's two podcasts that have taught me more about business than any other podcast in the history of the world. Number one is The Game by Alex Hormozi, and number two was Coffees is for Closer with You. So, mate, I listened to you on about 100 episodes before I met, and it was truly very influential in regards to building what we have now, which is our Done For You service, which was an early version of Fitness Sales Sniper.
It's interesting. They do say never meet your idols. So
Mate, I've enjoyed it, mate, sharing a few pad ties together. Sorry, pad CUs together.
that's egos, yeah. I'd
Yeah.
say a little more than a few at this point.
Yeah. Well, mate, I guess why I want to bring on the podcast is to talk about two things, really. Number one is, I guess, building Fitness Sales Sniper, building sales teams in general, and I guess what you do now, which is more operations and systems as businesses grow and scale. So for those who don't know who you are, James, can we get a quick 90-second story on who you are and how you ended up doing Sales Sniper?
Yeah, I am 3 foot tall. I like long walks on the beach with my dog. But outside of that, my background was we got into fitness sales sniper as it was at first from background in fitness, which is ultimately not overly evident right now. But my background was in sports science. I was a PT. Went and studied at uni exercise science, strength and conditioning. Um, I was fortunate enough to go and work for the Melbourne Storm and a couple of other NRL, AFL clubs. Sort
Mate,
of around that
I
time.
never knew that part of your story. So you were full on SNC.
Yeah, dude. It's an interesting world when you're 3 foot tall and you've got 200 kilo blokes and you're telling them what to do and get to a point where they respect you enough where they listen. That's a win.
How did you gain that respect, mate? Not being, I guess, a professional athlete.
Cracking skulls usually. No, it's respect is sort of earned. At those in any business setting, there's always power moves. People want to test you. It just comes down to having confidence, being very good at what you're doing, making those small things that you do to get wins from someone where you can earn that trust. That trust is typically then dispersed, and as long as you keep killing it, being really good, creating value for people, that trust is always going to be there. So one of the big things in that is creating value is probably the first and foremost thing, and probably the most important.
So teaching high-level SNC, you must have loved the science of fitness, the science of health. And quite often those people tend to be terrible salespeople. So how did you transition from SNC into gyms, into ultimately doing more sales?
Well, I mean, science is in another way, it's much like operations where there is a structure to everything. And systemizing and structuring the way that your body can do it in the same way as a business. For instance, and you'll probably understand this, if I go in and look at a deadlift, there'll be three key variables that are usually going to cause someone to mess up, right? That being frontal load, it being grip, and being hip position. It's been a while since I've deadlift, but you get the point. Now, usually for any of those three key areas where someone will mess up, there's going to be a large number of symptoms which can cause that issue, right? So if we fix those three core problems by understanding the underlying factors that may affect that, what we can do is we can put in structure, or in this instance, we can provide cues that will fix that structure. As soon as that structure gets fixed, we build the baseline. We can work with the knee extension. We can work with the hip flexion. We can work with the lats and the shoulder position, chin position. And as we get those all aligned, like key parts of the business, think of your foot position as your finance, your knees as your marketing, your hips as your sales, your grip as your HR. All of these things have sub-issues, and as long as we start at the floor and fix them, which is usually you want to start with revenue,
Yep.
Bring that up. We can get someone to a point where they can do a record lift. Very much like operations.
So
Everything has.
when you transition into sales, it's often like, oh, you're born with it, natural charisma. You can talk your way out of a paper bag. Did you ever see sales as something that's a gift, or did you instantly look at it as a system, as a process, and try and break it down?
I think I was lucky enough to be good, decent, but not incredible, right? And I'd probably thought the same over a long time. You're a good people person or you're not. Um, After spending a lot of time with people that aren't necessarily good at that specific gift, you understand that it is trainable. I mean, I personally believe it's not the same opinion as many other salespeople. You're going to get people that have that natural inclination towards it. They will always be better than someone who doesn't, with the same level of training and work. The same way as an athlete. If you get an athlete that is just naturally gifted, you give them the same instruction, you give them the same work ethic, they will always be better than the person without the natural ability.
Yeah.
However, you can still be good enough to compete and do so good for yourself without that.
Yeah, 100%. I guess Mitch and I in business, so I'm definitely more promotion and he's definitely more operations.
Yeah.
And when I have to send him a receipt for him to add into Xero, it's like pulling fucking teeth. But then I can talk about sales for, you've seen it at dinner for 3 hours while I'm stuffing my face.
Yeah, absolutely. Over, what's that? 2 curry chickens and butter chicken and 2 pad sius and 4 gyros.
So, mate, before you started Fitness Sales Sniper, were you more working for like a fitness first? Was it like a good life? What was it?
Yeah, so I mean, I was running my own business as a PT. I didn't really know anything about business. I knew that I learned how to do somewhat decent marketing. No, I wouldn't call it good by any means, but I could get leads and I could sell them. So I ended up hiring a bunch of other SSC guys, all the guys that worked under me at the Storm, and all the guys that I went to uni with. Hired a bunch of people. What I did is I paid all their rent in some of the big box gyms. I bought all my own equipment and said, this is a program that we want to run. And I would sell people into that and I would take a cut. So I built up a team of, I don't know, probably like eight people. Then went to work for some gyms, probably more aligned to what you do, which is, you get a bunch of cages, you get some group training, do nutrition and stuff like that. From there, I was with RBT. I came up to Sydney to run that as they wanted to expand gyms out here.
So many great entrepreneurs have come from RBT. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think that helped me in any way, shape, or form. I probably sat there pulling my hair out, going, "Hey guys, gotta be honest. I don't think you know what you're talking about, and I know I have no executive role in this, but I can see everything you're doing is fucking stupid, and you're going to bankrupt yourself." Which they did.
Yeah.
But you have a guy who's just running a gym tell you that you don't typically listen. So
Yeah, it's interesting.
what do I know?
I think gyms are just like, I think anyone that owns a gym, has been a gym owner, they're just tough businesses, and it just can't always be about marketing promotion. There has to be a good lifetime value. There has to be retention. And typically a gym owner falls into one category or the other. Very rarely do you get both. And I think that's probably the issue.
Yeah. I think also like people get into gyms just because they fall in love with that atmosphere, that type of work, but they're not ready-made entrepreneurs and will spend more time reading a book about how to improve a squat PB by 1% than they will learning about the finances and how to do things for a business, which is a symptom of passion. Like, it's what it is, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I always talk about, it was the biggest mistake we made, and it ended up helping us in the end. So we had one location in a town called Curry Curry in Newcastle, just outside of
What's that, a developer?
investment property. We got to 509 members in 12 months, and I was definitely the marketing promotion guy. I didn't give a fuck about retention. I was 26, doing nothing about anything. And it's hard for people to believe, but we burned through the entire town in about 12 months. So we pumped ads like you wouldn't believe. We were spending hundreds of dollars a week, which is even more in 2016 compared to the price now of ads.
Mhm.
And we had 509 members, but we probably went through over 1,500. And we just saw over time our cost per lead, cost per booking, cost per sale get to the point where it was like out of control expensive. And like, we couldn't figure it out. It's like, well, hang on, there's 14,000 people in town. We've already gone through 1,500. Like we've had over 10% of the town join. I guess no wonder. And that was probably the biggest lesson we took into the next 6 locations was like, hey, you cannot just open, sell, and not give a fuck about the back end.
Yeah, I think like particularly at that age, and particularly with gym owners, just because most of the time they're young, jacked full of testosterone. You get those quick wins and you feel unstoppable, and you're like, nah, this will last forever. I don't need to listen to this person's advice because I'm crushing it. And typically, you put your blinkers on and you fail to recognize, what years of experience can look at something and go, this is going to be a problem in 6 months. This is going to be a problem in 12 months for these reasons. When you're in that instance, you're like, no, it won't, because I'll just sell more.
That was exactly us, mate. So it was a crazy thing, mate. So we got lucky probably twice. So I wanted to approach the owner of this building and do a 20-year lease at a very, 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 very reduced rent rate. And that's how confident I was. 20 fucking years. And that is just young, dumb arrogance.
That's what they call the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even our second location was in Cessnock, and it was the same thing. That was like the peak of curry curry. And I was like, 20 years. Like, oh, sir, are you sure you just don't want to do 3 first?
Mate, if you're that confident on 20 years, just buy it.
Yeah, I know. But it's such an interesting thing because the problem we're talking about right now, most gym owners will never experience where they had such a high point, such a peak, and they actually burned through a town. But ultimately, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's probably what happened to RBT, just absolute churn factories and just burning through markets, burning through audiences.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. I'd say the biggest problem was cash flow management and inability to understand. Probably a couple of the biggest mistakes is that they thought was choosing the locations and doing enough baseline research on the demographics of specific areas and whether those ads would test well in those specific environments with specific competitors. Um, and then expecting results as their best performing gym and doing all the financials based off new gyms, not giving them enough leeway time to hit those break even numbers, and then trying to be too aggressive and open multiple locations at once, understanding that if something goes wrong on one, not really understanding your like sunk costs and how quick it'll take to get those to a level you want,
Yeah.
particularly bringing on new staff in new locations that don't have the experience to hit the close rates that you're basing all your financial numbers from, and then sitting there scratching your heads going, what's happened? Where's all
Speaking about being dumb, young, and arrogant, I never actually took into consideration that location was important. And how stupid is that?
single biggest thing for a gym?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in a town. This is crazy, by the way. If anyone's listening, if you're going to open up a gym, open one in Curry. In 2016, there was 3 gyms there, and today that business is still there. My mate Ryan bought us off it, still there to this day. There's only 4 gyms in that town in 2025, and it's a lack of commercial space. So if you are opening a gym, look for those unicorn towns where there's just not much competition.
Better opportunity is don't do that and just buy some commercial property.
that too. That too.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, you had fitness sales experience working at RBT, and then some time passed, and you started Fitness Sales Sniper. Now, the reason why this conversation is very relevant to me is effectively what we do is Fitness Sales Sniper today, and you guys are the only ones I'm aware of that did it kind of at scale. So I'd love to understand what was Fitness Sales Sniper, how did it work, how did it start, and I guess what came of it.
Yeah. How to explain it? Nice simply, it was one from all the years in the gyms. We got pretty decent at sales for that. Then thought, you know what? Most gym owners aren't very good at sales, as for what you'd mentioned. It's like, what if we just did the sales and got paid to do it? Then we had a client, as we're still working. That was with my old business partner, Matt. I think you mentioned before. Or it could have been offline. Then All of a sudden, we had 2 clients, then 3 clients, and we're making sales. I went, well, it's going to be pretty difficult for us to make these sales if we're still working. So we tried to hire some salespeople. They were also people in that industry. We eventually quit once we were able to pay ourselves a less than minimal salary, and racked up immense credit card debt to pay the guys to get it all going. And then we realized, you know what, maybe this is going to be decent. We expanded. We got a bunch of sales guys in different countries, started crushing it in the UK, had a lot of accounts where we absolutely shit the bed. It's what happens when you start a new business. You think everything's going well. It doesn't.
So I need, there's just so much to unpack there. So you got a credit card to pay the guys. What is your tolerance for risk today compared to then? And looking back on it, was it the right thing to do? Was it wildly irresponsible? What are your thoughts in hindsight?
I mean, risk tolerance is fairly high in most instances. I would say risk tolerances adjust as you age, and they adjust based on the assets that you have. Right. So, for me personally, from the years, I mean, I never had money at this point, but from the second that I got money, I was highly aggressive, risky with it. Because you should be in from anywhere from 20 to 35, you should probably be in an accumulation point in time where you're trying to aggressively get to a financial position where you have assets that you can leverage. As you then, begin to have kids, those kids grow up, you get later in life, that risk tolerance really should come down, so that you can get solid returns above market rate. So, you're probably wanting to get your money to a position where you're getting returns of, above that 6%, in something nice and stable. But in terms of business, you should always be aiming for super high, large returns. Provided you know how to run a business, you will forever. It'll be your best tool for capital gains, and building actual wealth. So my risk tolerance has still aggressive, but with my passive income, that risk profile has come down a little bit. With my active investments, i.e., businesses, property, it's highly aggressive and very open to risk. Yeah.
So the sales sample was in Australia, and you mentioned that you ended up in the UK and the US. How did that happen? Why wasn't it more accounts in Australia?
I mean, I'm relying on memory here. This is 4, maybe 5 years ago. One, I think it was the availability of staff we were able to find at a level we were comfortable with. We had some guys here in Australia that relocated back to the UK, and we got them working on UK accounts because they were an asset, so let's use them. Then, because of that, we got heaps of referrals in that demographic. So went and found people in, somewhat fitness industry that could do sales, that could service those clients. So it was really coming from referrals. Same as in the US, you begin to meet people see what you're doing, say, I want to work for you. So kind of really
Sorry, James, jump in. Is it fair to say in 2020, high ticket remote closers, remote setters, it wasn't really a thing in Australia? I never really heard of it till you guys popped up. And even to this day, we find that we get a ton of job applications from the US, not so many in Australia.
I think the path was somewhat laid by Hormozy in Gym Launch. Now, we'd never heard of him at the time of us doing this. It was through clients that said, hey, we're in this program called Gym Launch. We're not particularly happy with it. Can we try you guys? We're like, oh, what's that? This dude's done pretty good. I don't see why you're unhappy with it. I think that's more of a you problem than a program problem. And so that was the first instance we ever heard of it. I mean, we searched in Australia and the US. at that point in time, there wasn't anyone that came to mind that was doing anything similar. I think even Hormoz's model was well and truly different. Um, I'm I don't claim to have perfect understanding. I am sure there was other entities that did this at maybe a smaller scale and
Yeah, so
an industry. Yeah.
it's interesting. Like, so we've been doing this for 2 years in Australia now. I think we've had one competitor come and go, but it's just, do you know? I think you know why people don't do it. It's fucking hard. like,
Yeah.
because all the pressure, all of the accountability, you take all the blame, right? So it's actually a really challenging business. I love doing it. It's great. We'll do it forever, but like it's very challenging.
Yeah. I mean, like, there's 100% been some, I mean, you get, like, look at all the call centers and stuff. So it did exist and existed for a very long time as a profession. Um, I think what just happened is it's innovated into a certain field, and this was the time that internet marketing was starting to build up and be successful. So it was probably a lot of like right time, right place, getting in touch with, being a surfboard on a wave in an industry that was sort of growing. A lot of factors contribute to that. I'm sure that there was others that had that idea, attempted, potentially failed, um, potentially did well, just in maybe industries that there was no common denominator to meet and understand. But as far as we were aware, we sort of paved the way in that sense, I'd say, for a large proportion of an industry. Yeah.
Some of our clients today work with fitness sales now back in the day.
Yeah. Cool.
So
Yeah.
those guys were crazy. They just didn't stop dialing.
Yeah, man. So your staff or clients?
No clients.
Yeah, man.
Some of our clients. One in particular, yeah, I had this Italian guy calling for me. He'd send through clients at 10:30 on Sunday night. Like, can you even dial on Sunday?
I feel like I know who you're talking to, so blank out if I'm wrong. But
Yeah,
shout out to old Ben Shannon. Is that?
that's it. That's
Here we
it.
go. Look at that. I didn't know he was a client of yours, but I'm just
Yeah.
guessing.
I from there, fitness sales sniper got bigger and bigger and bigger. But then at some point, you transition to selling higher ticket things,
Yeah.
items for 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 15, 20, 30 and above. And I guess that's where Coffees for Closers started, the podcast started. That's where you guys really took off. And I feel I've seen pictures of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sales reps on your team. So what was that like, starting a business with a couple of gyms and then turning into this business that was doing multiple millions a month?
Well, I mean, in hindsight, it kind of all happens in a blur when it happens quickly, right? And everyone always asks, what happened here, here, here. You got a couple of people together that were highly ambitious, highly talented, and worked well with each other and pushed each other to get to a level, which creates for essentially a recipe for success. A lot of that at that time was still a blur, and it's you're doing okay, and then 6 months later you're like, holy shit, what the fuck happened? Don't know what happened. It's just things worked out. One, good team, highly talented staff, really good culture, which forced a recruitment of people that fit that culture, who were also highly talented, training them to a level, systemizing and operating to a point where things were highly replicable, and immense amount of failures and learning from those mistakes enabled things to, I guess, just accelerate, right?
So in terms of hiring all those sales reps and creating that culture, something that I'm going through today, right now, how did you guys do that? And did you make mistakes early on? What is even culture in a sales team? How do you cultivate it? And how did you grow such a large, high performing team?
Well, for me, I was always adamant on culture. For me, in my experiences, particularly with the Melbourne Storm, a culture is what drives performance. And in my past experience, I viewed salespeople as athletes. treated them as athletes. My business partner was Matt was involved in special forces, so we come from, I wouldn't say similar, but quite similar environments on different ends of the scale.
It's high performance environments, like get the job done.
Get it done. Don't fuck about. Stick to your values. This is what we do. Do it well. All right. High testosterone dudes, which is pretty much what it was. Ultra competitive, not just against winning, but also against each other, pushing others up. Then building a team that operates in that environment, which are there to push the other people and drive a standard. And it was really important to set values, set standards, enforce them, to create an environment that essentially we weren't running a, how do I say this? We weren't running a workforce, we were running a team, right? In the same way that you've got, in footy terms, you've got your halfbacks, you've got your hookers, you've got your front rowers. Everyone has their job. They are held accountable to their job. If they miss the job, it's next assignment, fix the next job. If you miss this call, the score starts to 0, you get the next one. And here's your feedback, here's how you get better. Super blunt, super direct. This is where you're doing really well. This is where you're not good enough. If you want to be a part of this, you need to get to this level. If you don't get to this level, we're going to have to move on. Set people challenges.
Yeah. And for anyone listening that doesn't like being under the microscope, that sounds like a very intimidating place to work where no one was hiding.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's, and this is where and this is the purpose of, like, podcast and that was, mate, like, this is not your typical workforce. This is who we are as people. You either vibe with that or you don't. If you don't vibe with that, we're probably not the team for you. Good luck, have success somewhere else. But we care about this, and we're not going to hire outside of what that environment is, because that spreads like cancer when there's anything that sort of undermines, or there's anything that breaks that contract, because we have a authority to our staff that we're not going to let things slip to maintain that. And if something is okay for everyone, it is okay for anyone. It is okay for everyone. And if we allow one person to get away with not being in that, almost cultish type of environment, it undermines the whole thing, and it lowers that standard. And for us, we didn't accept that.
So someone acted against your values, acted against your standards. What happened next?
I mean, like, obviously you make it clear. It's like, hey, like, you're not living up to this standard. This is the deal. If you want to be here, we will put all of the training, we'll put all of the development into you, and we'll back you to get there. In order for you to do that, I need these things in return. If you disrespect me and don't give those things in return, then we're going to give you time to fix that. But if it is a continued repetition, then we're not going to be a solution regardless of how good you are in terms of pushing the finances for us, right? Because if you got one guy earning you 100 grand, you got a team of 20, they're all earning you 100 grand. Sure, the 100 grand sounds nice, but if that allows a dip in performance of everyone else, because we now accept new standards, everyone else goes down to 90, they go down to 80. It's a lot easier to cut that 100.
So as you grew so fast, how did you maintain this standard? Was it constantly improving your onboarding? Was it your recruiting? And I guess maybe a better question would be is, did the sales reps themselves keep the other reps accountable? Like they were a part of the cult?
Yeah. I mean, cult's a pretty harsh word. I don't know if I was right. Like, for the listeners, it's not like we'll hand around Kool-Aid and singing Kool-Aid or anything. But
mate, there's nothing wrong with creating a cult, like for the forces of good.
Yeah, it's more like, you get involved with like any subgenre of group where you get along with everyone and you all have like aligned values and like a friend group, right? So one is when building culture, and this is studied like pretty heavily. Like, I mean, I never read any research on it in past, but have since, is having ambassadors for a cult. Like, this happens a lot in like large companies where like a certain large firm has been done for sexual harassment, and they go, oh, the culture at this club, it enforces it. What they need to do is cut the people that are doing it, fish rots from the head, essentially, replace it with new set of values. Then you need someone driving them down the chain, right? So in this instance, we need to put people to lead teams. Those people need to be super culturally aligned. We need them to set an example. So as you get bigger, you're sitting here setting an example for everyone, but you're directly working with the next tier of manager who has teams under them, right?
Yeah.
So as long as that manager is working and they are upholding their standards for their stuff, it tends to work, and it really just becomes one big happy family. In like any nature with like any animal of any sort, hierarchies form.
It's interesting, right? So we wanted to be the cool, hip internet business where it's fun, but now our org chart looks like that. Like corporate had it right all along.
Yeah. Well, I mean, corporates spend billions of dollars figuring out these problems. There's a high chance they're not going to do a $17 million contract with McKinsey only to get bad advice and go, you know what, we're going to ignore that.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can learn from corporate. You just have to decorporatize it.
I heard a great quote just before our podcast. I was listening to another podcast. It was, people try and fix the team, but they actually lost in the draft. In regards to like sometimes you're trying to fix a problem that was created by recruiting. So I am currently recruiting sales reps at the moment. I bitch and moaned at dinner the other night for 3 hours about how hard it is to find good salespeople. So James, help me. How does myself or how does someone else recruit salespeople that have your values and standards?
Well, I mean, there's a point in time where it was no longer me doing that. I maintained that at every single point during the journey, any new person had to meet with me for 15 minutes for me to get to know them, right? It's really simple. If someone gives you bad vibes, regardless of how talented they are, you maybe don't go forward. If there's enough, like if it's just me that thinks they're bad vibes, but a couple of other guys like give him a chance, I'd be like, okay. But it really comes down to, and like I had one rule. It's like, would I enjoy sitting around and have a beer with this person? If the answer is no, I'm not hiring them, no matter how good they are. But like for us, like we heavily externalized by the use of like podcasting, social media, what that culture was like, and build up a, for lack of better terms, like an influencer style thought processes around how we operated it as a business. That did a lot of our, how would you say it? In the use of a sales call, it did a lot of our triage process and filtered people out that weren't a good fit. Most people that come in, I had regularly when people booked in with me for the first time after they'd been hired, was like, I've watched all your things. I have some questions about this stuff, right? So that acted as like a defensive mechanism for people that typically aren't a fit. Usually that we got a lot of people via referral, or people that have gone through our programs and loved what we did and are potentially now looking for a new job, they would come to us. So building up this is what we expect, making that clear to the people coming in, it will typically weed out people that don't align with what you want as a company.
Your litmus test. Would I enjoy having a beer with this person? If so, I will hire them. If not, I won't.
Yeah.
Did you ever go against your gut?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
The outcome was?
More times than not, it worked out poorly, but there were other instances where it worked out well. No, I won't name the name. I doubt they care if I did. But I'll use an example. There was a couple of guys that were, high on this one guy coming in. I keep trying to not say his name, but it's a known story in our circle. And like we've probably said it on a podcast before, but again, this isn't our circle, so I won't, just in case it hurts his potential chance of recruitment in the future. And he came in, missed his call with me, last minute cancelled. I was like, oh, okay.
Bit rude.
Try not to assume. Maybe there's something that's, hopefully there's no emergency, right? He did it again. And I was like, whoa, mate, that's sent him a message like, hey guys, hey bloke, this is twice now. Not the best look for you in the most polite terms. So, fucking fix it. Apologize. Or this is not happening, regardless of the fact that you're already onboarded. Like, I'll pull the pin. I don't care. I have authority here. So, you're going to meet with me at this time. You're going to make it work. And you're going to tell me why. And you're going to have to convince me to accept that. It was probably a bit softer than that. I'm probably putting a bit of mayo on this story. And we had a very frank conversation. And I said, mate, like you're aware of like the standards that we have. You haven't set them. I'm not interested in your excuses. If there was something bad that happened, you had ample opportunity to say, hey, mate, I apologize. I don't feel comfortable discussing. There's been a personal instance. Do you mind if we move it? Like, cool. That shows me that you have care of the other person on the side of the phone. Now, if it was, and the fact that he rescheduled, then missed the reschedule, I was like, okay.
And from all accounts, the actual salesperson was a killer. Like, everyone knew he could close. He had all the credentials, but just wasn't a great culture fit.
That was up for debate still.
Okay.
Didn't speak very good English, to be honest. Set him challenges, exceeded them. Like, I put heaps of pressure and said, I am now going to challenge you because you haven't done good enough. You have to meet this standard, otherwise it's not going to work. Rose to the occasion, you know? That takes you have to respect that. It takes a lot of balls and a lot of, being a man, or, whatever the other version of that is.
I guess for someone to eat a shit sandwich, to go away, and then to prove themselves, that's impressive.
And that, you respect that. Your colleagues respect that. It allows you to, to write blank checks and secure your future. I think at one stage we ended up paying him probably like 40 grand a month in commissions. So like he'd done well. But that's like the best example of, probably don't cut people too easy. Give people a chance to prove themselves. Unless it irks you so much that you don't do it, probably trust your gut. Yeah.
Standards, values, authority, corporate structure, I guess ruling by the iron fist and just letting no one get away with anything. So did you have a sales team that was performing?
Yep.
You had one bad egg in there and that team fell apart?
I wouldn't say the team fell apart, but, there's a lot of... When you do really well and you start to train people under you, like, regardless of what position you're in a company, you naturally like bring alignment towards them. Like, for instance, if you hired me to come into your business and say, I want you to train these 4 people, and I spend every day with them, challenge them, give them success, there's a high chance that they would begin to respect me more than you because of that intimate one-to-one time I have. Right now, if they're influencing in a way that isn't aligned with the thing, and then you put pressure on that person that is training them to conform or, reach the targets that they're not reaching, they have more trust to spin things in a way that they want to, and align people that have now developed a relationship. And, you see that in every industry. Someone leaves a accounting firm and they take all of their accountants under them because they love that person, they love working with them, and they go to a new firm. It's no matter how good your business is, no matter how good your culture is, you still are exposed to the problems of every other business.
To fit the sales sniper to doing sales sniper, doing multiple millions a month across continents, then you ended up having a C-suite position at 7th level who just crossed $100 million US.
Did they? Congrats.
Fuck, that happened in a quick time span for you, mate.
There was a lot of work involved. Yeah.
So I guess what was it like, I guess, that 2 or 3 year period going from, I guess, a PT on the floor or a salesperson in RBT to effectively running what I would consider to be like one of the most successful sales training, recruitment, organizations on planet Earth?
Well, it's weird. That's the best answer I have. It's just weird. Like, it'd be very different if I had business experience. I would have looked at it because you're the same as the way that you mentioned when you come into the gyms and you're selling everyone left, right, and center. You get those feelings, egos start to go up. You're in a high where you're experiencing all these new things for the first time. You're financially better off. You're respected within a community. You're sought after. You have semi fame in a call it a niche market. It's you go from like 0 to 100 in a very very quick time frame, which is it's weird. It takes a lot to process, and it's clear and evidence why all of these like childhood actors and rock stars go off the rails, because it's a lot to deal with all at any one point in time, because egos get inflated, and you begin to be treated like a rock star or a god, and some people that's good for, other people it's not. It's the interesting thing about it is it's crazy how quickly life can change for the positive, and equally like for the negative, because you're doing really well, all of a sudden one day you realize you're doing something illegal, you get sued, it all comes crashing down. Like, not that happened, but you
Yeah.
see it in business quite a lot. So
I think that's the biggest thing I've seen, just how quickly people can turn it around
yeah,
with the right offer, good operations, good systems, good operator, 0 to 100 in a couple of years.
yeah, it's and that's the interesting thing about business is there's opportunities out there. You do your research, you understand the product that people want, you figure out a way to put that product in people's hands, and you get in a lot of these instances, you don't need the finance to start it up, but, depending on what it is, you go and raise the money to do it, and that's why startups happen every day. That's why private equity invests in firms and gives them some money to back them. Not all of them work, but, it's there's two little guys that got some private equity funding in Sydney 15 years ago that are now both billionaires in what's it called? I just went completely blank. Not Salesforce.
So Afterpay, maybe?
What's it called? Nah. Sure, we'll use that as an example, right? Um, Atlassian. Apologies.
Alessian.
Atlassian. The two co-CEOs, they raised a whole bunch of money, had this idea, developed it, had the business acumen to take it through. When that business acumen ran out, they bring on a board that could bridge the gaps and educate them, and they have a, company that's worth in the hundreds of billions. It's insane.
Crazy. So, mate,
Opportunities are there everywhere.
yeah. So your next venture, multiple ventures, doing some consulting, some systems, and some operations, going into businesses, effectively looking under the hood and trying to identify constraints. What type of businesses are you looking to work with today? Like, what is your ideal business? Certain revenue level, certain staff level that you can come in and turn around really quickly.
Um, it's a really good question. I've gone since then and studied a lot. One of the things that I realized with Sales Sniper and growing that is, did we do it optimally? Absolutely not. It was all bootstrap. I wanted to go and get some more technical knowledge. I've done an MBA. I've recruited some pretty high level board people that I work with for general business acumen and education. Now I have a real interest in the M&A field. It's something that excites me, as well as
Sorry, what's that, mate? Just so the audience understands.
mergers and acquisitions, right? So ideally, like for us, we go into companies that are doing somewhat well. We have some low level clients that are at that 10K a month. We've got clients that are at $1 million a month. We have the staff that can service people at that lower end. It's just how much of sort of my time you really get with that. So I guess like anywhere from like the 300,000 to $3 million a month is probably where guys, if we go in and do consulting, we can find the biggest issues because they have more infrastructure, they have more staff to find us information that we can sort of work with to pull out um, operational efficiencies and make things more profitable and better and restructure and look at all the stuff. So for reference, like what we do is like we'll come in and sort of assess, do a lot of audits, look at where people look, see how their operations run, see how their HR runs, see how their revenue systems are generated, and look for any areas where we think, you know what, some structure, some process, potentially some better people in these positions, um, where they could use that to improve the efficiencies or improve like the profit margins, or if not, at least structure them into a position where they can grow at a sustainable rate without them having problems that they're going to encounter in the future.
When you go into a business, do you try and addition by subtraction? Like that's a waste, that's a waste, that's a waste, that's a waste before you then bolt on the sales team, the CRM, increase prices?
Not necessarily. I think that kind of looks at things as too linearly. What you really want to do is assess what the purpose of something in a business is and what is the tangible ROI on having that as a purpose, right? Which is good information in itself, but assessing that is only relevant when you're able to look at the other options. For instance, like let's just say you hire a marketing manager, right? We want to look at what that deal is with them, how you're structuring that payment, how you're incentivizing them, and what the cost is that you're putting into that as a, let's call it an initiative, a business initiative. Then we want to assess what's the ROI if they perform at an average level or at that average KPI level, right? If they hit that, what's the return on investment for you? And what are the intangible things that that brings to your business as a consideration? Then what we would look at now, if you were to take that money that you're paying that marketing manager and put it into an operations manager at the same cost, what's the ROI on that? Or what's the cost in just spending another $100,000 on client acquisition? For instance, we can look at the ROIs of them, compare them against one each another, look at the intangible things, i.e., it builds a bigger brand. There's no ROI on that, but it's important. And then because of that, we can consider that this option B is probably going to be the best one and give you the best tangible result from an ROI, an intangible asset point of view, and the alignment to your end goal, right? So we suggest you get rid of this person, you replace them with this. Now, a lot of the time, what you'll find is that if we were to put more money into marketing, invest $100,000 there, plus invest in an operations manager, those two combined are better than any individual because now you're bringing in significantly more clients, which is generating you more money. Plus, the operations manager is making it cheaper, therefore creating a larger ROI when we can combine two initiatives together. So what we just want to do is audit us. What's the end goal? When do we want to be profitable? At what point do we want to grow? And set that into cycles. What are the key risks to this? What are the key ways to do it? What is the infrastructure required to do it? Then set out a plan, work with almost as like a board member,
Yeah.
work with that owner and say, you need to achieve XYZ things by this quarter. You need to achieve XYZ things by this quarter. If they're all done in our growth plan and in our strategic plan over a 3-year period, it will allow us to get to this position. That growth is going to be slow for 6 months. However, if we take that slowly, get this stuff in place, it allows us to grow at a significantly higher rate in year 2 of the plan as opposed to just throwing marketing now, as you said, like those gyms, not retaining, building a bigger pond, getting better people. So sometimes growth, which is something that I've learned by going all growth with Sales Sniper with just no consideration of the repercussions of that growth, and now doing things in a sustainable rate so that you can perform better over a 3-year period, a 2-year period, as opposed to now. And I think that's what separates businesses from being around in 5 years as opposed to being around in 6 months and taking advantage.
Yeah.
Now,
So me and Mitch always talk about better is better than new. It's so hard to stay focused. It's so hard to just improve the 100 functions in the business, to remove functions, to add functions, just to stay focused and to stay on track and not get distracted. Because we could just blast ad spend, we could bring on more clients, but if I haven't got the sales reps happy, those clients wouldn't be happy. They'd leave, they'd tell their friends. All of a sudden, this 10-year business lasts 3 years, and I'm on to the next thing. And I think that first location in Kurri was like the most valuable business lesson we've ever gotten. Because like if you don't treat people right, you don't do the right thing, nothing lasts forever.
Absolutely. Like the caveat is like, if you got a cow that's full of milk, you should milk it. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Eventually it's going to run out. But if you only take 1 liter a day, it might last 10 years. If you try and take 5 liters, you might last 6 months. Right. So, what's
when
important?
when you go into a business, is there something that you often see that's neglected that business owners, entrepreneurs just don't even consider?
I'm going to go ahead and say one of the biggest things is financial acumen. Something that we struggled with significantly. The problem is, like, you do well, like, revenue covers most problems, right?
It does.
You hit a record month. You're like, fuck yeah, everything's going well. Nothing is not working because we made all this money. Next minute, you're like, oh, we got all these problems, all our money's gone.
Yeah.
It's just
It looks great. It looks great on the spreadsheets, but doesn't quite add up in Stripe.
Yeah, like I'd say financial acumen, and with that I mean is understanding finances and how your cash flow works and how to predict, how to budget accordingly, and how to grow based on that. Then the second biggest thing is just understanding how to make things sustainable and finding gaps and having the preparation for problems and doing your risk assessments.
And most owners think about cheap leads.
Yeah, I'll ask you, like, what's the biggest risk to your business right now?
That's a great question.
Well, let me ask you a different question.
I've got the answer. It is we are heavily reliant on Meta to drive results for our clients. So if Meta's cost per lead doubled overnight, that would mean that we'd make half the amount of sales for our clients. At that point, our business would no longer be viable. So I have thought long and hard about this.
And that's why you do a risk assessment, look at these things. So, like, what we would ask is one of the first things to do is let's do a risk assessment. What happens if Meta, high chance that they don't, because that's their revenue as well, but who knows? What happens that if Meta has issues for 3 months, your ads stop working, you do shit for 60% of your clients, get them half results, how many leave if you had to guess?
A lot of them.
Cool. So what we would look at, and again, doesn't mean you do it, right?
I'll just jump in. I expect that to happen, which is why I am just so, every moment I'm awake, I'm thinking about how can we improve the outbound sales team? How can we get more outbound reps? How can we improve the lead to sale for our clients? So even if Meta does double, if we convert twice as many leads, it all comes out in the wash. So like, this is something that I'm actively like working on every day.
Yeah. I mean, and it's something like that. It's, call it a black swan event, right? If it fucks you, it fucks everyone else, and it's just shit happens. Same as if there's a world war and you're in logistics, like your business is gone. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
It's not always something you can do to protect it. But what you would do is, instead of potentially investing in bringing more clients where you bring them onto Meta, exploring ancillary services where you can do potential Google leads, you can sell other things. That way, you have structured revenue that covers your costs if that was to happen, so that you can potentially weather the storm for a period of time. And it's just really looking at your plan B's, plan C's, which is, never the forefront of mind if you're just a small growing business. But as you get to a point of stability, some of these things need to put in place.
Yeah, I think for me and Mitch, we've just always been tight-asses in the best possible way. Like I bought another webcam with an Ozbot light. It was $300, and hey mate, are you okay if I buy this? And just, I know he's not going to say no, but it's just out of respect, like, because not that the Black Swan event is coming. Well, I went through one, mate. I went through COVID. I own gyms.
Yep.
So like, it's just, I guess. The other thought too, in 2016, when I had Curry, I thought I was the smartest man in the world alive. You said something really important. This is never going to end. That's exactly what I thought then.
Yeah. And like, it's, I mean, it just comes down to like, if we're not even talking about business, it's like how, like I am sure you have your goals as to where you want to be at set points in life, right? If this income goes away, have you put enough money away where you're investing in other sources where it can carry you through a 6-month period so that you can rebuild and get back on track to achieving that? And that's where we come down and we do like the budgeting and planning with people and saying, for you to hit your goals, how much do you need to extract out of this company? And if you were to take that amount out, what implications does it has on growth and stability? Where do we find the balance, right? Yeah. So how much do we assign to CapEx? How much do we assign to be paid out of the business so that you can hit your long-term goals and structures? And then it's really just doing a lot of that planning, having those meetings where when you get attached to shiny objects, that you've set your plan to say, these are the targets that we want to hit. This is what needs to be done. The reasons that they need to be done is so that we can take this out so that we hit these goals over our lifetime. And you have the luxury of doing that because you're best friends with your business partner. So it means you can do it together and there is no individual who wants to take things in different directions, right? Because you have the same goals and ambitions. So with that, when that comes, you just need that person to go to where they can say, stop, dickhead. We had this discussion with it. These are the key things we're going to focus on for these reasons. Has something changed? If that answer is no, you need someone to slap you and go, all right, get back to work, mate.
So I'm having a baby in 3 weeks. I'll have about 2 or 3 weeks off, and we're not growing in March. But it's been forecasted. I've actually absolutely fucking blasted Jen and Feb.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Mate, some really, really, really high level stuff. I just want to thank you again, like sincerely. Like I'm not just blowing smoke up your ass here. Like your podcast really fucking helped us grow this business, and I was always very, very inspired by Fitness Sales Sniper. And ultimately, a combination of you and the first version of Homosius Gym Launch is what led to this business. So thank you so much, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll just finish with it. It's funny you say that because never ever had that intention with the podcast. It was just a reason to talk shit. So. Yeah. Cool.
Mate, our podcast, all I want to do is have my friends on and just have a yarn.
Yeah, there you go. All right, mate. So, yell out if there's anything else I can do for you.
Thanks so much, James. Appreciate it, mate.
See you, buddy.